regime. There was no need for passport.
Had you finished that part of schooling in those 4 years?
I had done 6 years, the year I was there from class 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did the 5 years, and the 6th year I was back at home. I did that. As a matter of fact, Szilágyi Bácsi, the name of the headmaster was Szilágyi. He was a wonderful man.
In which school are we talking about now?
He was headmaster in my hometown. And
we've just got to take a break and change tapes. Interview with Rabbi Michael Mandel. This is tape 4. Rabbi, you were telling me about your return to Shimleul, and you mentioned the principal of your school. What was his name again?
Szilágyi Dezső. He was a very, very fine man. In fact, he was quite a bit impressed with me, having returned from my uncle's home, which was the home of 2 teachers. My uncle and aunt both were teachers. And he, from time to time, because I was away for 4 years, my schoolmates who were during Romanian regime until the Hungarians returned or came back, they had to learn Romanian. And they were obviously, I mean, it's obvious because the Hungarians, Romanians don't like one another at all. So they knew nothing of Hungarian history, which was part of the curriculum. And so very often Mr. Szilágyi, or Szilágyi Bácsi, or affectionately called Szilágyi Bácsi, which means Uncle Szilágyi, called me, Mandel, I want you to give them, I have to go to the council chambers, I want you to give them a lesson on such and such a period in Hungarian history. And I was a 6th grader. So I gave a lesson whilst he was away. He left the class in my hand, which was wonderful. But he so much liked me that at his own expense, he traveled 100 kilometers to Oradea, Nagyvárad, and there arranged for me high school, border, uniform, school books, everything was given to me in 1941, taken away from me in June of 1941, and taken away from me by September.
Why?
Because I was a Jew. No Jewish enrollments, no new enrollments. That was the end of the story. And that had an effect on my schooling, because I was, without exaggeration and without conceit, according to him and according to all the others, I was an excellent student, always top. Not because probably of my intellect, but because of my diligence. When others went to play, I went to study. And I had to learn well, had to satisfy both my uncle, and I couldn't bring shame on him that his nephew, who is in his household and does not learn well. Anyway, so I was giving these lessons, and he went and got for me the scholarship, but it was taken away from me. And I would have otherwise been going right to matriculation, and I wanted, from the age of 12, wanted to be a doctor of medicine in order to do some research in leukemia, because that's what my mother died of. And I wanted to, with all my heart and soul, to prevent that anyone having to grow up without a mother, and to do help those people who have leukemia. And I just didn't eventuate because, as I say, I did not have my matric. When I came to Australia in 1947, I had to start learning for the matriculation. Anyway, that's the Silaji Bachis.
Going back now to your return to Shimleul, how was it to be away from your family for 4 years? When you left, you were an 8-year-old.
That's right. Well, it was wonderful to be back with my father. I remember one episode when I returned. It's very much etched in my memory. Soon after my arrival back home, my late brother Yankee came to pick me up from Satmar, because I came by rail to Satmar, and he came to pick me up. That was 100, well, I don't know how many kilometers away from my hometown, about probably 80 kilometers or more. Anyway, be it as it may, he got me home, and my father was absolutely overjoyed with tears in his eyes to see his little Ben Zekunim, his little son, back home. And he didn't examine me just then, but then several days later, about, I think, a couple of weeks later, a letter arrived from my teacher, Moshe Ephraim Schwartz, in which he sent a ksav. Ksav means just a writing. In other words, a letter saying what my attainments were in learning. And my father was having tears in his eyes when he read the letter. He was very, very touched by it. And he examined me, he tested me the following way. He said, now there is the bookshelf, or actually the Swarm Shrank. It was a cupboard, or a sort of, it's a cupboard type of thing. And open it up, stand with your back to the books, and pick out any one of the books. I said, all right, I picked out one, put it on the table, said, open it up wherever you like. We said, tell me the page and tell me the Mishnah. That's the enunciation of the part of the Talmud, and then it's being discussed in the Talmud itself. It's Mishnah and Gemara, two things. And he said, all right, tell me the Mishnah. Once I told him the Mishnah, he recited the whole page by heart, verbatim, absolutely perfect. He had a memory, more than photographic memory. And because I said, I've listened to you now, I want you to listen to me, to test me. And that's how he did it. Then he embraced me, and he cried so hard. He was so pleased. If I've never done anything in my life that was pleasing him, that moment gave him absolute heaven. That was my late father. Universally respected by all and sundry, Jews and non-Jews alike. We had one of the domestic servants, Ludovica, whose husband walked out on her while she was expecting. And eventually she gave birth to a child in our home. The husband didn't come, didn't pay any alimony, didn't pay anything. So my father traveled at his own expense to Zalau, where there was a court, and to plead her cause and try to get some sort of maintenance or something for the child. That was my father. That's the type of person he was.
You returned to Shimleil in 1940. Your bar mitzvah was in 1941. Do you remember that?
Of course I do. I had to give a dissertation, what they call a pshetel, which I had to prepare myself. I showed it to my father after I prepared it. It had to be my own. And then I gave it in the presence of our Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Ehrenreich, of blessed memory. I can show you a photo of him in a book, Yeshivot of Hungary and Transylvania, so on. He was an absolutely angelic person. He was my godfather as well. He was our rabbi, my godfather. And his second wife and my late mother were very, very close friends. So when my mother passed away, the Rebbetzin insisted on me not going home from Cheder, but coming to her place for lunch. And for about 4 years, regularly, I ate at the Rebbe's place, at the Rabbi's table, for 4 years, when I was a child. And then when I went off to Mihai, and when I returned also, I was quite frequently, but not daily, there. But she was such a close friend of my mother, she wouldn't hear of me not going. If I would not come, she would be offended. And the Rabbi also liked me very much. When I came back, he was sitting, if you face the ark, on the right-hand side of the ark, in his own rabbinic place, the stender, and which are on a swinging door. He asked me to come to his box, so to speak, Rabbi's box, and he set me on his knees. And the others were so envious and so first of all, they were surprised. And he dandled me on his knees for quite a while. I was already 12 years of age. He liked me very much. And I was there. I remember this, that even when before I went to B'tzer Mihai, and especially when I came back, every summer, Shabbos afternoon, he was doing the Ethics of the Fathers, giving exactly 1 hour lecture or dissertation on it. And whilst children like to play and play football or whatever, I would never miss it. And I loved listening to him. He was such a fine speaker. As I say, even an 8-year-old boy or less than that could understand every word he said. And I was simply, idolizing him. That was our Rabbi. He did many wonderful things. He went several times to Israel. In 1 year he invited my father to go with him, but my father couldn't go and couldn't afford it and just couldn't go. But he was in Israel and then returned. Pardon me.
The war in Europe broke out in September of '39.
Mm-hmm.
You returned back, as you said, in '40. Had that outbreak of war affected you in any way in what was now Hungary?
Yes, well, in Hungary already earlier there was rationing introduced, and Jews got a different, not immediately, first we got the same as everybody else, but eventually we did not get the same sort of coupons like the others. We were not given, for instance, butter coupons. We had to make do with sesame oil, which was old and smelly and all that, and less bread, like this. The coupons and vouchers were for much less than the average general population. And that was one of the things, but then there were restrictions, plenty of restrictions.
Like
They started with restricting Jewish landowners to have their fields worked by non-Jews, and they virtually forced them already then to sell their properties. All that was needed on the part of a Hungarian citizen to go to the council chambers and say, I would like to have such and such a property. So they called in the owner, the registered owner of the property, and he says, hey Jew, you want to sell that vineyard or that wheat field or that forest or something, don't you? Had no idea of, no notion of it, no desire at all to sell it, but he wouldn't dare to say otherwise, so he saw what was happening, and they would say, he said, yes, now suppose the property was worth just roughly $100,000, just suppose, plenty more, but doesn't matter. He would offer a princely sum of maybe a couple of $1,000 for 100,000 property. And he had to sign it on the dotted line that, yes, I hereof of my own free will and consent hereby transfer this land to the noble, this, that, and the other, giving him all the titles and undeserved decorations.
What happened to your father's vineyards?
Well, some of them were sold in this fashion, got for it a pittance, and he signed it over to the person. Now these people were not ordinary citizens, but they were members of the Vitezi Kar, that's the people who fought with Horthy Miklós, the Admiral Horthy of Hungary, and he was a member of that. Vitez means champion or something like that, hero. Hero probably would be the best word for it. They had, of course, tremendous clout because they were, they could write in front of their name Vitez, V-I-T-E-Z, with an acute accent on the E. Vitez, and so this how my father was defrauded of his property.
What year are we talking about now?
That was in 1941, 42, something like that, maybe 43.
What were you doing at this time?
I was at school. They instead of a high school, they extended the elementary school, which was prior to this time only consisting of 6 grades, made it into 8 grades. And I was there for the 8th, for 6, 7, and 8th, for 3 years, from 40 onwards. In 43, my father sent me up to Budapest.
Why?
in order to learn some sort of trade or something, in order to be able to earn some living. And apprenticeship was not open to Jews, not all apprenticeships. And you had to have someone who is willing to take you on, because apprenticeship in those days consisted mostly to be the schlepper to the boss, whoever it was, whether it was a tailor or a cabinet maker or whoever. And usually you did the household chores for his wife, rather than to teach you something like lathe work or sewing or whatever, or cutting or designing or whatever. But I went up to Budapest because my uncle at that time still had a factory called the Hungaria Gutex rubber textile factory, where they were making the foundation garment material, that is for the corsets and brassiers, you know, the elastic material. And that was manufactured there, and I worked at that factory for a while.
What was your uncle's name?
Mandel Jenő in Hungarian, which is translation is Eugene. Mandel Jenő, and his wife called Serene. And Jenő bácsi had, together with Geza, who in 1939 left for Australia. Well, originally he left on a business trip to Brussels, and from Brussels he went to London, and was made a business proposition to come to Australia, and he did. He liked it, and by that time it was the war almost on, and he sent a cable, I think, to his wife, to Irene Néni, who had two daughters. One of them is alive, the other one died some 12 years ago, 14 years ago. Dr. Eva Mandel, she lives in Sydney. And they came, when the war broke out, they were on high seas, I believe, if my memory serves me right. And they came to Sydney, and they settled in Sydney, and they went to school, to Kambala, a Church of England school. And
going back now to your time in Budapest.
That's in 43, from 43 to 46.
Where were you living?
At my uncle's place. And every weekend I used to go out to Isidor Bácsi, my other uncle, Moshe Israel. He was living in Rákossemia, and he was the gabbai there. He was sort of the vice president type of thing. And every Shabbos, Friday, I went by the local electric train to Bützen-Mihai.
Did you go and visit your family in that time that you were, after you arrived in Budapest in 43, did you go to visit your family ever in Simleul?
I wanted to, but what happened then was that when it was very bad times already.
What do you mean?
In May 1944, my uncle and aunt received a letter from his brother Mano, writing a card, not a letter, a card. Was written there Waldsee, and a date. Writing quite nicely. Says, we arrived and we are at Waldsee. It's a beautiful place, and we have work here, but we would need some underwear. They were puzzled. And so was my father, because he received a similar card. And he wrote one letter I have of my father. I'll show you a copy of it, if you like. He writes concerning this, he says, we are at a loss to understand why Uncle Mano is asking for underwear. This was a scheme of the Nazis, we discovered subsequently after the war, that when they transported the people, first of all, Waldsee sounded like a holiday resort. And there was a place, Waldsee, near Switzerland, near the border to Switzerland. And we were nonplussed why he would be asking for that. And my father, in his letter, which was dated in April 1944, just before, a few days before they were deported, he writes to me, he says, Manó bácsi is asking for fehér nemű, for underwear, white underwear. We don't understand why. And that was that. But so in 1943 I was in Budapest. I was working in the factory. Fridays I went to Isidor bácsi. Sunday morning, Monday morning I came in and worked there. And during that time, the expelled Jewish university students formed a group called MIEFOE, which is an abbreviation of the Hungarian Israelitish University Students Association. And they were, because the professors were also dismissed, almost none retained, though they were better than anyone. The students also, so they just chucked them out. And they came to the Jewish Community Center, and there they gave structured lessons in all sorts of subjects: biology, history, economics, mathematics, all sorts of things. And they also had languages, English, and I took a course. I only had 16 lessons, but I had to pay for it, of course, because that was their only sustenance, what they could get, the few pennies that they could get together. They were very, very well qualified to do whatever they did. They did Hebrew and English as well. And I took a course, as I say, in English. That's the only English knowledge I had before I arrived in Australia. And at work, there was no discrimination in my uncle's factory, but because there were Jews and non-Jews employed there, the factory manager was a Mr. Major, pronounced Major in English. He was given top salary, free hand in everything, but he was a disloyal, so-and-so, good-for-nothing person. If he could, he would have dubbed him my uncle at any time, but he didn't.
Dobbed him in for what?
Whatever. Excuses would not be lacking. I do not know what.
Were there any other restrictions placed on you in that period, 43, 44?
Well, I had to go to 42, you say 42?
No, 43, 44.
43, 44. I was still 43. I was still in Szilágy, in Simleu. I had to go to Levente. That's the sort of pre-military age. I don't know whether you call it paramilitary or whatever organization. Both Jews and non-Jews had to go to that, but eventually, originally we were together.